Welcome, everyone. My name is Kimberly Ellison-Taylor, and I am delighted to be your host today for our Customer Spotlight program featuring Western Digital and Deloitte Consulting. Over half of the world's data runs through Western Digital. Its storage systems power the world's response, research, and communication efforts. Following the acquisition of two Fortune 500 companies, Western Digital needed a way to integrate the business data from disparate systems into a single platform to maximize synergies and create a platform for future growth. They chose Oracle Cloud. During this live session, we are going to examine a few ways Western Digital has reimagined its business with Oracle Cloud ERP, EPM, and SCM with expert guidance from Deloitte. By standardizing on a unified cloud platform and an end-to-end approach for transformation to improve financial and operational visibility, and also to create that platform for growth. Also, by increasing its business resiliency and agility to handle geopolitical and economic challenges, and also by empowering FP&A teams to improve its planning and forecasting processes. So, before we bring in our panelists, let's learn what keeps you up at night with a quick poll. CFOs are revising stalled operational plans, reissuing financial targets, and investing in technology. These are all signs that companies have shifted their sights from surviving the pandemic to charting a new path forward. Where are you in prioritizing an ERP technology investments to support your big moves in the next normal? Please select one. So, is it supporting an M&A or divestiture strategy? 2, pivoting towards a digital or subscription-based business model? 3, automating the financial close? Or is it automating security, audit, and risk management? Let's see which one of these reflects your environment. Wow. So it looks like automating the financial close is still very much top of mind. And certainly from my travels and speaking with executives all over the world and organizations of all sizes, the need to get better data faster to the internal decision makers and also meet regulatory guidelines remains top of mind. That is a very interesting insight, and I hope we're going to hear more about what you are concerned about as we go through this presentation today. So I'm excited. I hope you are as well. So welcome Tina Mashiko of Western Digital and Jody Hill of Deloitte Consulting. They are here to tell us how their companies are working together to leverage Oracle Cloud, ERP, EPM, and SCM to improve Western Digital's resiliency and also create a platform for growth, while sharing a few lessons along the way. Tina and Jody, could you please share a little bit about yourself and your company? Tina, we'll start with you first.
Thank you, Kimberly. Western Digital is the world's largest storage and data infrastructure company, as you mentioned. Our end-to-end solutions meet the data storage needs of everything from mobile devices to autonomous vehicles. Half the world's data is running on one of our devices. Western Digital was deemed an essential business early during the COVID pandemic. And as such, we've been operating across all worldwide operations to support our customers and the systems that rely on our products. As Vice President of Finance, I'm responsible for the enterprise and business unit P&Ls, business unit finance, revenue and business planning, global OpEx, R&D, portfolio management, and finance business systems. I've also led, as we talked about, combining all 3 Fortune 500 companies. I've led the cross-functional teams to integrate finance and business processes following the complex acquisitions. Outside of finance, I'm also responsible for establishing and co-chairing our Enterprise Transformation Office, which is responsible for approving and governing all enterprise transformation projects, including the implementation of our end-to-end business process and governance structure, as well as the ERP implementation.
Tina, that is absolutely amazing. And I'm sure Western Digital is very happy to have your leadership at the top of this project. So Jody, let's hear a little bit more about your role at Deloitte and how are you working with Western Digital?
Thank you, Kimberly, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jody Hill, and I'm a principal at Deloitte. We are one of the world's largest professional services firms. We have more than 100,000 professionals providing value-add engagements across the areas of consulting, tax, risk, and financial advisory to a broad cross-section of the world's largest corporations and government agencies, and we're very proud of our portfolio of clients. As a principal, I spent the last 20 plus years collaborating with our top clients, such as Western Digital, on these programs. And where I focus are the areas that span across the enterprise, and particularly in accounting and finance, the end-to-end business process, and of course, technology. I'm a leader in our enterprise performance portfolio, where our focus is helping our clients recognize the value that they can achieve through digital technologies in the modern world. And today, I'm excited to join Tina to talk about the Western Digital story. It's one that we feel very great about. We think it's a great story, and it's where we've embarked on a multiple-year journey to deploy Oracle Cloud across the enterprise. I've been engaged with the organization and the leadership team for 4+ years now. That encompasses everything from the upfront strategy and road mapping and well into execution. Have a lot of history and a lot of background here at Western Digital. Very proud of that and happy to be here today. So let's get ready to have a great discussion.
Absolutely, Jody. So it sounds like you really have a very good partnership between Deloitte and Western Digital, but even more so between you and Tina. And so I think that's an amazing opportunity for us to hear more today. And so my first question is for you, Tina. So our relationship between Western Digital and Oracle goes way back to 2016. And I said way back because in today's environment, 4 years ago seems like light years ago. And so you were at a point 4 years ago where you and the Western Digital team had a decision to make. You were integrating 3 Fortune 500 companies. And I know I said that before, but I understand, and I know our audience does, the complexity of integrating Western Digital, SanDisk, and HDST together. And so you had a key decision to make. You had to decide whether you were going to standardize on EBS or SAP, and you decided to become an early adopter of Oracle Fusion Cloud. So tell us a little more about that journey and what were some of the goals you were driving toward for you and your team?
Well, we knew after the acquisition of SanDisk and lift of a hold separate with HST, Western Digital needed to fully integrate the 3 equal-sized companies in order to maximize our anticipated synergies. At the executive level, we knew this would require strong sponsorship from the top in order to be successful. We aligned to assemble a leadership team that allowed Western Digital to leverage our collective experience. We had people who knew how to implement technology, people who knew the business, and of course, strong expertise in finance and accounting. My previous experience with M&A and similar transformation programs was able to complement the other skills and experiences of Steve Philpott, our CIO, and Jahid Kandakar, head of our worldwide applications. We set the vision as a team between finance and IT. It was a joint, not just an IT-led goals for the project, and a phased deployment, delivering incremental value, not waiting for the big bang as typical with an on-prem, and as well as an approach that was flexible enough to accommodate ongoing business events. A focus on mitigating risk to the business operations as well as a scalable solution that would grow with us for the next 20 years, as well as an implementation partner who could help us translate our vision into strategy and execution. That is when we chose to partner with Oracle using their latest cloud offering as a solution that could help Western Digital achieve our goals. We also then selected Deloitte as an implementation partner and advisor, which rounded out the team. I have a graphic to visualize the overall complexity. So on the left here, you can see the current state when we started this in 2015, as well as up until January. So we have 3 on-prem ERPs. 2 of those were implemented over 20 years ago. To the right, you can see what we called our cloud and our ERP ecosystem. So we knew as part of this journey, we were going to be consolidating ERP onto Oracle Cloud as an opportunity, not only to completely rethink how we worked, as well as create that foundation for the future for us, for the company for the next 20 years. Hopefully that's helpful. And you can see on the right, in the core on our ERP vision, as well as our ecosystem is Oracle Cloud, and each successive circle around it, the adjunct applications, we've pushed for cloud implementations for all of those as well. So it gives us that flexibility as well as agility.
This is very helpful, Tina, because it does give us a great illustration of where you were and also your ERP vision. So thank you for that. And of course, I love the part when you said why you chose us, but I think I love even more that there was such a tight partnership between IT and finance, because I think that is so important and one of the critical ingredients for success and implementation. And I can tell you that even as I speak around the world, a lot of times I come across, teams where IT is leading the project completely and finances is not as much a part of it as they should be. So kudos to you for sitting through, I'm sure, agile discussions, sitting through technology terms that you were probably thinking, what am I listening to? But I appreciate that we had such a great partnership. And I don't know, Jody, if you wanted to weigh in on anything that Tina just said.
No, I think, Kimberly, you hit on the point that I wanted to make, and that was a large part of the success. That was a calculated decision made by Western Digital for this to be jointly led, and ultimately, I think, was a big component that has contributed to the success.
So when you were thinking from a Deloitte perspective, Jody, way back then, in the old days, so that was even early for Deloitte to be talking about implementing Oracle Cloud. What were you thinking, and how did you ensure, with all of your years of expertise, what were you thinking about how you were going to help ensure that the team was well positioned for success?
Well, that's a great question. And I do want to focus that it was the earlier days. It wasn't exactly the early days. We did have some reference points to draw from other implementations at that point in time. And to your point, 4 years does seem like so long ago. I think when we started to look at Western Digital, where the focus went really quickly was the overall size, scale, and complexity of the business. And could we build a model and a plan that would accommodate that? There's lots of moving pieces, as Tina just covered, that we needed to account for. And we certainly knew day one, we weren't going to know all of those things. So we needed a plan that was flexible and something that we could continue to evaluate and change over time. With our global operations and supply chain, again, those are things that some unknowns compared to some of the other enterprise cloud implementations that had just been done, from Deloitte or other implementers at that point in time. There was also the M&A component. Oftentimes, after a large M&A transaction, you'll see the organizations are left somewhat fragmented with shadow organizations and disparate processes. But clearly, that was not going to be our charge here. We needed to standardize everything, so no stone left unturned. And we went in with some of these higher level concepts that we knew we needed to do to set the groundwork in order for this to be successful. And kind of building on what Tina just touched base on is we also knew it was going to require a large amount of experts and people from around the globe that knew how businesses operated, not just in the US, but also in Europe and Asia, where Western Digital has a large portion of their operations. But going back to the leadership, the overall commitment was there. I can't tell you that how many times you go into these implementations and sometimes they're looked at as you're dealing with a capacity problem. You referenced a minute ago, IT led. Sometimes you go into an organization and they just don't have the capacity to conduct a program, but that's not the charge that Western Digital set out. They wanted us to do this with them. They wanted Oracle and Deloitte to partner with them. And that was very important up front because it allowed us to establish collaboration, allowed them to share their ideas, their vision, and it allowed us to quickly understand where we could work with the team and immediately start to add value. And I think that was a very important component. Going back to the overall approach, so we based it on what's called our methodology or momentum for Oracle Cloud at the time. And our methodology is evolving with every experience. We go back, we revisit those tool sets, but this one was a good one. We were able to leverage lots of information from Western Digital to move into momentum, but nonetheless, it was a repeatable method for activities like design thinking or testing, the things that we knew were kind of table stakes and allowed us to focus on some of the more visions, the visionary stuff of the overall program. And we designed phases to accommodate the business. We wanted them to be independent enough that we had checkpoints that would mitigate risk, but we also wanted them to build on each other so that we could reduce rework. And those were some of the lenses that we put on the program throughout. There was a careful planning process that went into every phase, individual phase. So we didn't just plan once, we planned. It's the measure multiple times, cut once theory, if you will. And I think that allowed us to really accommodate a lot of the ongoing things that we encountered. Tina talked about business events. I mean, over multiple years, you just cannot predict everything that you're going to go into. And there were several that were unplanned throughout that we were able to pivot and accommodate with very minimal disruption. I think one of the better comments that we heard throughout the program is that in our first deployment, we patched or upgraded the system twice during testing and deployment with minimal changes to the timeline. That wouldn't have been possible before. And now those were some of the things that I think really started to get attention and helped us gain momentum because the technology, the process, the approach that we were taking, it worked. And I'll leave you with a couple of the overall milestones for the project because I think those start to draw a picture of just some of the challenges that we had. Is, we had a phase where we focused on a single consolidated GL that then fed into an overall integrated planning solution. You talked about that at the beginning of the show. Tina certainly knows the ins and outs of that. That was critical. It was what established a baseline for Western Digital to be able to manage the business up front as a whole, 3 components into one. We deployed over 12,000 users globally. That was a huge, huge deployment, right? And then my personal favorite was the supplier conversion. We rationalized like 15,000 suppliers. I was personally a part of that. It all into Oracle Cloud. I forget what the original number started with, but 15,000 is certainly huge. But those are just a few of the big accomplishments, and I think you can tell that it was a challenge, but it was a fun one, and and I think that we reflected back and were able to alter along the way.
Amazing. And I guess what I want to ask Tina, hearing Jody, I can feel like relief. I can feel confident. I mean, it sounds like I could keep my job if I were in the role. I'd be thinking, wow, this project is going to work. Well, were you thinking that at the time? Take us back to what Jody was saying. What is your perspective of that?
During that first phase in the early days, we learned a lot in that first phase because having never done cloud. So that was one of the things is you approach it, and having done multiple ERP on-prem implementations, which gives you a framework to which we approached phase 1 initially. Quickly learning through that process, that we couldn't adjust that, and that's where we definitely leaned on our Oracle partners as well as Deloitte, as well as really leaned on our executive teams to make sure that we are all aligned with the amount of change, which was even bigger than what everybody thought. We underestimated what it was going to, the amount of change. And so, each one of those from phase 1, we learned a lot of lessons to which we've hence used in every single phase after, in our testing, how we are doing our testing, the deployment, as well as change management.
Well, I can tell you there's so many things to unpack from what you two just said. And I just want to, state a few of those. So it sounds like you start with an amazing visionary corporation like Western Digital, doing three Fortune 500, bringing three Fortune 500 companies together, phenomenal world-leading technology, and an experienced global partner in Deloitte. And you bring all three of those together. You have commitment from the executive leadership, Jody, if I heard you correctly, commitment from the executive leadership at Western Digital, collaboration between finance and IT. You on the Deloitte side brought in global resources from around the world. Tina was fearless, because you have to be fearless in order to go through and say, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it for 12,500 users, and then we're going to harmonize another 15,000 for the supply chain side. And it just sounds like you plan to adapt to change the entire time. It was built into the process. And so is that a fair kind of reflection on some of the ingredients that really just made this so successful?
Absolutely. And the key thing, and this is where for anybody contemplating this, it's two things: being open to change and actually understanding change is going to be the success, as well as tied in with the executive sponsors, as well as commitment across the board, and being behind this and helping, shall we say, reinforce the vision. Because again, people go back, change is hard. So people's natural inclination is go back to, well, this is how I've always done it. But this is where, when you have the executive sponsorship and executives every single quarter, our quarterly town halls, our COO, president and COO would actually give updates on the ERP. That's how important and strategic this project has been since the beginning of the journey.
Amazing, amazing. And so now, Jody, I want to ask you, Deloitte talks about 6 strategies that CFOs can adopt to better manage through, I would say this is a PhD in uncertainty. The COVID pandemic environment has tested all of the things we knew growing up through our careers. And now we're at this point where we are looking for guidance, and we're looking for the expertise that you can bring. So can you walk us through a few of those and just tell us some of the ones you think are most relevant to our topic today?
Absolutely. So as you said, Kimberly, we're in a world of uncertainty, and our experience this past year has been like none other. And I say that to say that the talk track is constantly evolving, but we do have a few things that we can talk through here that we think are current problems that we talk with our CFOs. I'll pick off a couple and I'll cover those, if you will. So the first one is really there at the top. I think everyone's faced with preparing for talent disruption. And leveraging the words you just used, there's a lot to unpack in that at the surface. When I think talent disruption, some of the things that I'm working with our clients on that they're realizing, it isn't so much the virtual part. Tina's got some great data points that we'll talk about going virtually, but more so preparing the workforce for the working virtually. The things such as having to take care of dependents at home, or no schools, or the ongoing changes in that. People like myself, or having pet sitting, all of the things that you don't think of when you don't have to manage that on a day-to-day basis, those are having an impact on companies' businesses, their ability to leverage their resources. There's less capacity there, and when you combine that with the virtual workforce, we can assume that it's having some impacts on organizations. So we'll need to continue to refine and hone, and we're advising our clients to refine and hone their plan for how they do that. Going down a couple, looking at overall operational improvements. This is something that organizations will have to do throughout. We encourage our clients to have a multi-step plan, a 1, 2, 3, if you will, of things that you look at, things you can do immediately, something that you can now back that up with if it's just not overly effective, or you're faced with another change, and then so on and so forth. Have those prioritized. Have the ability to harvest the information from your systems and your people and your processes to inform you to make those good decisions. And then last one here, just so we don't spend a whole lot of time on this one, is talking about the plan post-COVID, right? So most of what everyone, I think, is challenging is still working in the world of COVID, but just as it came, eventually it will go. And we like to challenge our clients to continue to look for what that life is going to look like beyond. How do you analyze markets and products and services to make sure that your company is healthy when we come out of this? And we will. But so not just focusing on the point in time and how do we deal with COVID, but let's look at what's beyond that. Right now is a time to be innovative. Now is a time for really big thinking, having tools in place and technology and processes. Those are the things that are required to arm our executives and organizations so that they can make these decisions and create these plans and run healthy organizations for years to come. So those are just a few of the things that we're talking about out in the market. You know, and it's response to a lot of the questions that we're hearing from our clients as well.
Well, I appreciate those. And I think it aligns very nicely to the next question for Tina, because I know, Tina, you initially chose Oracle Cloud as a way to integrate all of your 3 separate businesses, but you've also learned that it's also a great way to collaborate virtually between finance and operations. And so can you tell us a little more about how you're doing that?
Absolutely. Going back to the slide where I showed it previously on our ERP and our cloud ecosystem, we consciously chose to architect our cloud communications and collaboration tools to scale. Within days of initiating the work from home, tools scaling with 4x to 15x pre-COVID use and volume. Thanks to cloud and the cloud infrastructure that we had deployed, allowed us to handle the volume and keep operations running. I'll give you a data point just to illustrate. Pre-COVID, finance has 766 employees worldwide. We're not a work from home culture. We only, out of those 766 employees, we only had 21 employees working from home pre-COVID. Within 72 hours of shelter in place, we moved to 100% working remote. 2 weeks later, after shelter in place, we had to close the books for March virtually, and we did it seamlessly. It was huge. This cloud enabled us to reinvent the way we are working together by controlling cross-team actions using the tools. And the tools themselves, there are many built-in capabilities that can be leveraged for better flow of information, as well as status of individual steps. So it's been huge. And so since then, since shelter in place, yes, it was hold your breath, the 2 weeks after shelter in place, and no one going from 21 to all working remotely and closing the books. It was stressful, but since then, we've also had our year-end close as well, all virtually.
Tina, that is worthy of, if we were in person, I'd be jumping up and down and giving you the high five, because you said things that almost would have seemed impossible, and yet you managed to get it done. And so that really just speaks to the next question, which is about business continuity. And so can you tie a little more of what you said? I mean, going from more than 700 people not really working from home to less than 72 hours. Now everyone's at home now, and you have to close the books, and you did it. Oh my gosh, that is amazing. I need a t-shirt that says I closed the books during the pandemic. And I just want to, applaud you for that. But now let's talk about the business continuity. And I think you've answered it, but I just want to hear any more you might want to say about it.
Absolutely. We had other major challenges before COVID. I'll give you an example of what happened in a 30-day period last year. We had a major power outage at our fab in Japan. Within that, I think it was 11 days later, we had the Huawei China regulatory freeze. So data and technology enables us to make what I like to call a quick pivot. And we were able to mitigate about 98% of the potential issues for the customers, as well as meet the government regulatory requirements. I mean, that was huge. And that's where, again, it's trying to use data and technology to help mitigate the risks, making quick pivots to be able to make quick informed decisions. We also, in this last year, we also went live on cloud manufacturing and direct procurement at 8 of our component factories in Southeast Asia during February and March of this year. And let's think about February and March of this year. This was in the epicenter and the height of the COVID lockdown in Asia. Also, to continue with our challenges, we needed to start the next steps of our next phase of the ERP and manufacturing footprint deployment in two of our major finished good hard disk drive plants. We needed it there to help improve agility and flexibility so we can manufacture the right product in the right place in the two plants. But we did all the project kickoff and the ramp up and workshop of those two plants all remotely, which we never thought possible.
That is just unbelievable. Jody, what are your comments on what Tina just said?
Well, I just want to amplify the complexity here. So Tina's first close was a quarter close, right? And we all know how challenging that is. And Western Digital is on the June 30th fiscal year. So she was doing all of this in the fourth quarter of her fiscal year. So I think that the ability to scale, to react, it's impressive. So.
Absolutely. And it sounds like to me, Jody, that whatever may come, because unfortunately we know that there will be no shortage of uncertain times, that Western Digital has a platform and a structure and leadership in place that well positions you for whatever comes. And that's a great place to be. Deloitte also recommends driving operational improvements. And you just spoke about that in the 6 strategies that you shared with finance leaders to get through COVID. So how do you manage and mitigate risk as well as serve as stewards of the company's assets?
So we've been able to consolidate application, automate key financial workflows, and radically improve on productivity, as you could obviously think about some of the things to enable what we just talked about. We reduced the number of cost centers from more than 15,000 to around 5,000. Slash the time it takes to approve purchases as it's streamlined in our process from a average 16 layer approval to 5 or fewer layers. Operational improvements are not a one-time thing for us. Western Digital is constantly evolving and our strategy needs to be reevaluated from time to time. We have a foundation of capabilities in our solution that can scale with our business to provide insights into our decision-making processes and provide data to help us better evaluate scenarios. So if you think about it, optimized data access, higher data quality, analytics through self-service application, and enterprise-wide data warehouse, which is absolutely critical for us, which gives us the real-time operational and analytical reporting, providing employees with the ability to make data-driven decisions to respond to any disruption we have, which includes COVID-19. So optimizing data access, data quality, and analytics through self-service and data warehouse has been one of our major focus, as well as we've been also kicking off maximizing planning and reporting tools and currently creating and designing and piloting right now a data analytics COE.
That is also amazing. And I love the diagrams and charts that you're sharing, because I think it really does give a great visualization of what you had described, Tina, and that you're leveraging the guidance that Deloitte has provided. So thank you for that earlier chart, Jody, and also thank you, Tina, for the chart you've just shown. And so, Jody, as we come back to you, can you share a little more about the advice you're giving clients to leverage the cloud and drive the same kind of productivity we just saw that Tina was sharing? And it also increases performance as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the point here is to continue to drive innovation throughout the organization, right? We know innovation doesn't just end with being digital, if you will, and it certainly doesn't end at the point of deployment. My most successful programs are the ones that have a next up mentality, the ones where there's a healthy backlog of business initiatives that we can continue to expand upon the technology to benefit the business. From an innovation perspective, at Deloitte, we're always challenging ourselves for innovation, right? Why not lead by example? And one of the things that I think we're leveraging to assist our clients with is what we call the digital foundry as a service. We started this well before COVID, and boy, wasn't it just in time. And essentially what it is it's a program where we work with our clients to constantly fill the pipeline with value add opportunities to leverage digital. You kind of break that down from the imagine to the shape it, make sure that it fits within the areas of that where you want to make progress or that can have an impact. And then, align to the overall organizational strategies. and then make the ideas real, right? How do we build them out? We did that on the overall program for Western Digital, where we built tons of proofs of concepts, and just to build it out to make sure this wasn't a project that's going to go, that wasn't going to go anywhere. And through this, we've been able to create joint teams to work with our clients during this time to continue to look for ways that we can innovate. We leverage the client experience for their business pain points. We leverage our experience, technology strategies, and innovation ideas. And that's really improved the opportunities that we've been able to uncover in areas to automate things like close, touchless processing, eliminating things that don't need a human interaction to do that, especially now in a virtual environment. If we were to look back solely at technology and I had to give someone tactical advice on how you leverage the cloud, I'd tell you, don't deprioritize upcoming releases. In this time with this constraint on workforce, it's easy to deprioritize that, just to take the releases, never really consider the value that they could have to your organization. We encourage our clients to continue to look at that. That's table stakes. You should always be doing that, making sure that you're leveraging the benefits of the applications and the future releases, because people are driving innovation for you. Why not take advantage of that? Be realistic about what you can accomplish, right? In these times, don't sign up for too much. We, earlier talking about talent disruption and the ability to work virtually. But we know that we need to be very targeted with the initiatives that we do. So don't take on anything that's not going to add value to the overall organization, and make sure you understand completely, what that program is going to look like. A couple of things that I personally like is don't recreate the past. As I talk through these, we stand up governance. Digital Foundry, has governance, testing, procedures, everything to help enforce governance. Don't go away from that, because you'll end up back into the scenario of 15,000 cost centers that Tina just talked about. And that's regressing, right? You're certainly not improving productivity in those areas. And then lastly, going back to what she talked about on collaboration, it is important to use the power of the tools where available, and not build sub-processes or microprocesses outside of those that just add increasing overhead to your staff already, right? So I think these are some areas that if we looked at leveraging cloud technology, that corporations can continue to do during this time, and will be successful, in uncovering areas for performance and process improvement.
But I'm going to go to Tina, because Tina, when Jody was speaking, I looked at you and you were nodding. So some of what he was saying was really resonating with you. Can you just share maybe one of the two of the things that made you nod?
Well, governance structure, and going away from that governance structure, it allows that is so key. And that's been the key from the planning phase all the way through our current phase. And that's what has allowed for us to actually, shall we say, break through a lot of barriers and things that people said that could never be done, is having that very tight governance structure tied in with the leadership as well as escalations. And that has been key for us to actually, shall we say, push back, create that very healthy, but within guidelines to actually get where we need to go and not regress. And that's huge.
Governance, right? But yes, there's also a point, Tina, about people. And we know people are critical in any implementation. And I know I peeked at the Q&A that we have queuing for us, and there are a couple of change management questions in there as well. So can you talk about the people implications and any of the change management challenges that you may have encountered?
Traditionally, change management is always considered at the end of the project after you go UAT, right? And it's usually an afterthought. With the cloud, this is something we learned from phase one. Change management didn't make the budget in phase one. Hugely painful. So again, for us and the governance, as well as the overall mandate for our journey, we determined 98.5% vanilla, no customizations, which means 100% business process re-engineering. So our number one lesson learned in phase one is that you need to include change management. You need to include them early. So we pulled key business process leaders out of their roles, backfilling them with new people to process transactional day-to-day work, as well as additional key leaders assigned full-time to the Oracle Cloud project. We also put our created our Transformation Management Office, which is a governance structure for commitment and execution, again, with cross-functional executive representative below each of the C-suite, responsible for the approval and execution. We also, with this, because we know with change management, we created a change champion network and leveraged those people to accelerate the adoption. So we have a small corporate change management office supported by our version of the National Guard. So we have functional change champions built into every single function. So this has allowed for faster adoption within the function when led by one of their own. So it's not just this corporate, small little corporate thing being talking to them. It's one of their own that's part of their function, that's been part of the journey, that actually can accelerate the change adoption, as well as it's provided individual development opportunities for those people as well, and keeping that relentless focus on avoiding customizations.
Wow. I think I love the change champion. I love that role, and I think kudos to you for setting that up. Now, Jody, what learnings or lessons can you share with our audience today about your experience deploying Oracle Cloud at Western Digital?
Well, we did learn a lot, and it's been over a long period of time. And, we learned lots on most engagements. We did a lot of great things and got a lot of things right at Western Digital. And so I think I'll kind of go through a healthy balance of that. But Tina's already covered the managing change adoption. I would say make sure you look at that holistically, right? On these programs in the beginning, you don't always have a view of exactly what that's going to look like across the organization. But there's one thing that we can always assume is that these programs do not impact everyone equally. I like to say that strategies and programs and initiatives, they just don't spread equally across an organization. And pay very close attention to that, and that you're adhering and communicating to the folks that may not receive the benefit early on in a program like this, and help them understand where their points of benefit are going to be delivered later on. I think that's key. One thing that I think we definitely got right is make sure that you align your roadmap and harmonize that with your vendors, softwares and SIs, right? You don't want to be going in opposite directions. We want to align what you need to do from an organization and the capabilities that you require to your overall program to avoid any hiccups. And if there's any type of joint collaboration involved, set up those teams at the beginning, call that out, work with your partners, whether it be Oracle or Deloitte, to make sure you have a plan in place so that you can counteract that. That's definitely something that all of these programs are going to require. And then a little bit of data, right? I touched on suppliers earlier, and these things can get really big. This seems pretty detailed, but you can never have conversations around what you want to do from a data perspective too early. Like, get those conversations out, get a plan in place. Sometimes you can even start on that. Just make sure what you're asking, what you're looking to achieve, what benefit it's going to deliver. And then, as important, if not more important, what's the effort that it's going to take to get there. And lastly, we've said this from the beginning, it's a constant theme, strong executive leadership. You're going to have things that come up. You're going to have changes. You're going to have issues that you need to deal with. If you bring your executive leadership along for the journey, you'll be able to work through those a lot quicker than you would if they're kind of on the outside. So I think going back, just the leadership, the communication, the change, the points that Tina touched on, technology, it's going to work itself out. It's all the other things that you need to make sure that you're focusing on. So I think those are some of the big ones that we learned here at Western Digital.
Great advice, Jody. Thank you so much for that. And I guess with that, such a great, background, and now we have more context. So Tina, what's next? What's next on your cloud journey at Western Digital?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we kicked off in May our current phase, what we call phase 4B. Out of our journey since the beginning, this is the largest scope, the largest user community. So when we kicked off and we did this all virtually in May, we had over 1,100 people on our kickoff for the WebEx. I know not as big as attendance as our CEO quarterly town hall, but the second largest so far on the WebEx users. But here, just so on to give a visual to everybody, so you can see on the global map that what all the locations impacted, but a couple of the main things to take away for the scope here. At the end of phase 4B, we will be retiring 2 of those on-prem legacy ERPs. We also are eliminating 120 apps and tools across the sites. We'll have migrated 4 billion serial numbers to be migrated to a unified application. 2/3 of our company's revenue will be also migrated to the cloud, as well as 160 non-factory legal entities will be migrated to the cloud at the end of this project. And the target go live right now is January. And so you can see the scope and the impact, and from kickoff to all phases of this. And we're in the middle of one of our testing cycles right now. It's all virtual.
Amazing. I know I'm speechless looking at this chart. I'm sure everyone else was speechless looking at that chart. Congratulations on getting so many people, only second to your town hall, to actually join and to the rollout and find out more. Yes, that shows that you have commitment, you have engagement. Those are also ingredients, and you're bringing the team along with your change champions. Kudos for that. And now, as we're about to come to our question and answer period, we'll have time for at least 1 or 2 more questions before we're at the top of the hour and we have to conclude. So much fun today, so many insights, so much to unpack. I know I'll go back and look at this recording and think about this as I go forward and I work with other people on their implementation journey. But before we start the Q&A, we'd like to have a poll. So this is the poll. How likely are you to move forward with a virtual implementation of Cloud ERP in the near future? That is a very good question, I'm sure, that you're probably thinking about, but here are our choices. Very likely, somewhat likely, or not likely at all. So very quickly, I'm sure we'll get an answer on the screen. Yes, very likely. And that is what we exactly like to hear. And then somewhat likely, and then not likely at all. And I would encourage all of you who have selected different items to please be in touch with your Oracle account representative. If there are questions that we didn't answer for you today, if there are points you'd still like to know more about, give us the opportunity to answer those questions for you. I think you have heard an amazing collaboration today with Western Digital, Deloitte, and Oracle. And I am 100% confident that with more information, 100% of you would be selecting very likely. And so with that, let's see what questions we can answer. So I know, Tina, you already talked about change management, and I think that is outstanding. But what about the customizations? When people are used to on-premise solutions and are used to just walking down to IT and asking for customizations in, to meet whatever new requirement, how are you handling that?
Again, I talked about the 98.5% vanilla. What I didn't go into detail about is that overall premise. We came up with that as a team with finance as well as IT. That's our overall premise to how we're implementing from start to finish. So when 98.5% vanilla means 100% business process reengineering. Any requests for us that for customization requires a business case, as well as taking it up and presenting to our C-suite. So, and I make sure every time, and I start every kickoff, probably the 3rd speaker, but that is our mandate. So we had 0 customizations and we make sure that every phase that we've gone through, we tell everybody we've had none, and no one really wants to be the first to go to the C-suite and ask for a customization.
Well, that is certainly a great deterrent. Jody, what do you think about that? I think if someone said to me, if I needed to get something in, I had to go to Safford Cats, I think I'd be revisiting my my thoughts.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, I just sent those requests to Tina's office, right?
But usually, yes.
But I think she explained the process really well. And again, it goes back to the sponsorship and folks that are willing to say no. You know, obviously there's always areas that where you have to do development, but not customization, right? And we were able to leverage some of the different past technologies and around the integration and making things work. But overall, that 98.5 was brilliant. Being able to stick to that took a lot of enforcement and governance, right? So, yeah.
Well, I said Tina was fearless. I think right. That is definitely fearless. And it ties to the next question, Tina, about why not roll out Cloud ERP by regions? Why do it the way you did it?
Okay, so the non-politically correct, we knew we didn't want to give ourselves a lobotomy because we wanted to have one chart of accounts. We knew we were also going to do vanilla as well as drive out a global process. And if you do region by region, sorry, I've done this multiple times, everybody's got some unique requirements versus if you're addressing it from an enterprise perspective, you're ensuring consistency as well as ensuring the use of and maximization of the cloud and the benefits. That was one of the huge, and we just did not move off of that.
You have stuck to the stuff that you said you were going to do. I think that's another learning that when you set a mark and a stand, stick to it. And so we are out of time. I know it's unbelievable because an hour went by so quickly. So I just want to thank you so much, Tina. Thank you, Jody, for your time, your insights, your very unfiltered advice. I think we love hearing your lessons learned and the challenges. Thank you so much to the audience for joining us. I know that this is truly an uncertain environment that we're all in, but I want to pick up something that Jody said when he said, this is not the time to stop doing what we're doing. We need to continue to look for innovation. I love that you said that, seek ways to innovate, seek ways to continue to move forward in this environment, plan to adapt to change. And I think you heard all of that about the Oracle Cloud solution. And I would encourage you to find out more. Now, if you have any questions, we really want you to stay connected to us. So we have a community-based thought leadership team, and you can contact Customer Spotlight Series _US at oracle.com. If you want to have any other discussions, questions, points, you need additional information, please do follow up with us. We will get you connected to the right team member. And as we close, we do have a very quick poll we'd like for you to answer, if you will. And if there's anything at all that I can do or any member of our team, and I'm sure Tina and Jody as well, we are on LinkedIn. You can definitely reach out to us there as well. Thank you.